Hello, I'm Rebecka Sheffield, and I'm here to tell you the story of the 1979 Binational Lesbian Conference. Now, if you live in Toronto today, you're likely familiar with the annual Pride Festival that takes place here each June, culminating in a colorful parade celebrating two-spirit, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, non-binary, and queer people. The Pride Festival grew out of a long history of activism and organizing for the social acceptance and human rights for 2S LGBTQ+ people. I want to tell you about one moment in that long history. I want to take you back to May 1979, when 400 women came to Toronto to take part in the very first Binational Lesbian Conference. For 3 full days of workshops, presentations, and discussion groups, lesbian women gathered together as one community that was distinct and special. But before I get to the point, and I do have one, I want to set the stage. In the 1970s, lesbian women were still mostly in the closet, afraid to disclose their sexuality for fear of losing jobs, housing, or even their own children. But things were starting to change. You see, 1979 sits at the tail end of a rather progressive period in Canadian history. Out on the streets, the gay liberation movement was in full swing, with many activists laser-focused on ending the police harassment of gay men. The women's movement was also thriving in the city of Toronto. Organizers, many of them lesbian women, had helped found women's centers, rape crisis centers, and daycare centers, as well as social spaces such as the Toronto Women's Bookstore and women's coffee houses. But lesbian women often found themselves caught between a predominantly male-centered gay liberation movement and a women's movement that seemed to prioritize straight women and their families. And it was in this context that a group of lesbians gathered together and decided to build a community space of their own. A safe, positive space in which lesbians could socialize, organize, and meet each other without fear of reprisal. And this is exactly what they did. In 1976, a group of women founded the Lesbian Organization of Toronto, LOOT, the first openly lesbian feminist group in the city. And soon after, they rented space in a house at 342 Jarvis Street. Now, LOOT didn't always get it right. In 1978, the organization affirmed its position that LOOT, which prided itself on being a women-only space, was not open to trans women, a decision that continues to cause division among lesbian feminists today. But what the organization did do was provide peer support, telephone counseling, participate in annual International Women's Day marches, manage a lending library, produce a newsletter, plan potluck socials, and promote concerts and performances by lesbian entertainers like Heather Bishop and Farron. You name it, LOOT did it. And this goes to show you that if you want to get something done, it's best to put a lesbian in charge. LOOT also hosted the 1979 Binational Lesbian Conference. Hey, see? We finally arrived at the story. In fall 1978, a group of LOOT members decided that they wanted to organize a conference to raise the visibility of lesbians. They began fundraising and planning a program that would bring together working class and middle class lesbians and feminist intellectuals from across Canada. They even began to popularize a slogan, "What do you do with 1,000 lesbians?" I want that on a t-shirt. You see, the conference organizers were quite passionate. They believed that in order for lesbian women to achieve equality with men, they first needed to develop a strong, self-determined community of their own. To achieve this, women would have to learn skills and knowledge that had previously been the domain of men. At the same time, lesbian women needed opportunities to share ideas, work through contentious politics and disagreements, and build personal and professional competencies. And that's exactly what the 1979 conference was meant to do. Now, this wasn't the first lesbian conference. There had been a small gathering in 1973, and then another larger conference in Ottawa in 1976. This time, though, the organizers hoped the conference would be larger in focus and attract attendees from across the country. Oh, and it would be called binational, not just national. And this was because organizers wanted to recognize the growing Quebec sovereignty movement and include participation from Anglophone and Francophone women. Loot booked space to host the conference at Hart House, a student activity center on the University of Toronto campus. It was only a few years prior, in 1972, that Hart House even began allowing women to become full club members. Conference organizers hoped to fill the whole building with lesbians. And they did. Though not quite as many as organizers had hoped, more than 400 women convened at Hart House on May 19, 1979. They came by foot, bicycle, bus, car, train, and even airplane from all corners of the country. On the first day, a Saturday, women arrived for an opening plenary and a day of workshops, with topics ranging from lesbian relationships to lesbians in prison, all offered in simultaneous French translation. One workshop dealt with motherhood. Now, this was a time when lesbian women routinely lost custody and had to fight the courts to even access their own children. Another workshop focused on minority lesbians and what we might now call intersectional identities. While lesbian feminism is often and rightfully criticized for centering the needs of white women, Black, Indigenous, and women of color were always part of and driving conversations and activism within the movement. The discussions continued into Sunday and were complemented by a series of skills-sharing sessions. Participants could learn about basic car maintenance and bicycle repair, how to run a coffee house, and even self-defense techniques. Women were offered lunch, billeted accommodations, and even free daycare. Organizers really thought about everything. On Monday, May 21st, at a closing day plenary, Loot member Amy Gottlieb led a group of participants to draft a lesbian Bill of Rights. This manifesto attempted to awaken a new energy within the lesbian feminist movement. It stated, and I'll paraphrase a bit here, "In the past decade, as many women came out, we have built communities and networks. We've taken a collective stride into the future. Let's let our militance and imagination lead us forward, always hoping that we will be respected for who we are." Phew, I've always admired Amy Gottlieb for her optimism. But let me pause here for a moment and reassure you that even among difficult times and challenging conversations, lesbians can have fun too. The conference organizers made sure to pepper the program with a range of social events. There was a percussion jam, an evening of theater, an art show, and even singing lessons. A highlight of the event was the Saturday night banquet and dance. Picture it. 600 women came out to the banquet room of the War Amps building at 62 Wellesley Avenue West to have dinner and dance the night away to the music of local favorite Mama Kia 2. Now, there was a long tradition of women's dances in Toronto. These were great spaces for lesbians to frolic and have fun, maybe even find a date. Mama Kia 2, named after the Inca goddess Mama Kia, was often the house band, fronted by singer Susan G. Cole and later Lorraine Segato, who would go on to form the Juno Award-winning Parachute Club with keyboardist Laurie Conger and drummer Billy Bryans. I can only imagine what it would have been like in that room, among 600 lesbian women, to feel the power of that community, a community that barely made a blip on the radar for most people living in Toronto at the time. The 1970s was really a period of lesbian identity in formation, and the conference was a clarion call for a more public and visible presence. You know, another highlight of 1979 was an event that featured the inimitable Robin Tyler. For those of you who don't know who Robin Tyler is, she was part of a comic duo, Harrison and Tyler. For nearly a decade, these two toured around the world, visiting small venues, colleges, and women's coffee houses. In 1979, Robin released an album called Always a Bridesmaid, Never a Groom, and made history by becoming the first out comic on American television, 20 years before Ellen DeGeneres would do the same. But I think even for Robin, the conference and the energy that it created by bringing together so many lesbian women in one place was, well, it was memorable. This is Robin and her childhood best friend, Shelley Robertson, a star in her own right. Shelley was an arts and entertainment editor for the Toronto Star. In 1979, Shelley accompanied Robin to U of T campus for the event, and this is what they remembered.
I remember that show because I had just completed Always a Bridesmaid, Never a Groom, and I remember that was one of my first performances of it. It was great because I was mirroring their experience. That's why comedy became so big in the women's movement and in the lesbian movement. It even outlasted folk music thank God, at some point. It's still around today because it really reflects our culture.
When the night was over and we were on our way home, we hopped in a cab. Robin had a girlfriend in Toronto, and we're heading for Robin's hotel where the two women will be dropped off. They are smooching in the back seat, and we are having a conversation about the evening and lesbian this, lesbian that, lesbian, 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 lesbian. That was the whole conversation until we got to the hotel. The two women got out, we said our goodnights. When we get to my house, the cab driver turns to me and he says, "Would you like to go out for a cup of coffee?" I thought, are you deaf? I almost fell out of the cab. It was really, really, really funny. So that cemented that night in my head. It was a great evening.
So, 1979. While the Toronto lesbian community continued to develop in strength and diversity, the Binational Lesbian Conference gave women the opportunity to exchange ideas, share culture, and enjoy each other's company, sometimes intimately. They were, and we are, as the conference organizers proclaimed, united in armed snuggle.